Hey, all you big brains, this is Shelina Ramnarine. She is a PhD genomic scientist and a big brain activist. And I asked her a very peculiar question. If you go into a doctor's office and you're speaking with a white clinician, and there's no one in there that looks like you when they're showing you pictures or symptoms or things like that, there's immediately a lack of psychological safety of, does this person actually know how to treat me? So could you explain a little bit more on like how much risk there is that clinicians aren't being trained on different skin colors, and what that also means to the patient and like their experience end to end, from a fear of the healer or a trust in what kind of diagnosis they'll get, if they have to continue to get disproportionately higher second opinions because they don't know, like, just to kind of dig into that problem space a bit more, because you were able to advocate for J&J to leverage funds in partnership with academia to actually fix this systemic inequity. And I think that's beautiful, and kind of ladders up from all the work you did within the organization. So curious.
Yeah, so I
So we're going to get to this answer, which is a very excited answer. But welcome to Second Sips, where we go deeper on the Sunday Sips podcast with kind of some feedback. I have a tablet pulled up, and it's all because I made you a promise from this edit. Another quick note to the viewers: I'll do everything I can to make the language of this discussion as inclusive as possible for folks who may not be as deep in medtech or pharma, or also like race and health equity. And I normally record a second SIPS deep dive where I break down highlights of this conversation for people that need a bit more, so that way you could speak at your level. Additionally, we will transparently discuss race, ethnicity, inequity, gender dynamics, and other touchy but necessary spaces. So I invite our viewers to lean into the dialogue, as it may be uncomfortable at times to face this. But beyond everything that I've shared, I'm curious how you would describe the essence of who you are. So actually, to catch up, I'll let you watch that. But I have this whole edit pulled up, and I've put these little markers here, and we're just going to flip through different markers and go deeper into topics I didn't have time to discuss in detail during this podcast. So if you haven't seen this episode with Shelina Ramnarine, which is incredible, I'll post a link to that. But I'm excited to just explore this with you. Going to have a tablet to write up some stuff, and we went into some really interesting spaces on how to become unapologetically me, how to let others experience the weight of who you are, and how to leverage our unique giftings and talents within the context we're in. So we'll let Shelina introduce herself, and then we'll just start blitzing through these bullets. And I'm parenting 3 kids while my wife's sick upstairs, so it's going to be a raging party, but let's jump into it.
oh my gosh, the essence of who I am. I don't know if anybody's essence can be reduced because we are so many different things. And I've always been a person that likes complexity. I think it's so interesting. It intrigues me. I'm very curious. I love to like dig deep, like a squirrel. Like I'm just like, oh, let me like follow this. So I don't know if I could describe my essence, but I guess what I can say about myself right now is that I have been in a season of refinement and a season of preparation. And one of the things that I have been refining is really my ability to embrace and accept my voice. And I'm really looking forward to having that conversation with you today because this is something that has probably been a challenge for me for many, many years. And you and I have talked so much about this and what that experience has been like for me because of many reasons, being an immigrant, being a Black woman, being a woman, being someone I think who's probably a little bit more direct in their communication style, right? So there are many layers as to why that has been a challenge for me from the external view, but also internally, like self acceptance, learning how to love yourself, learning how to hold rejection, and learning how to figure out what are the spaces that truly honor, see, and accept you. So I feel like it's going to be a rich conversation. Don't know if I describe my essence, but that's where I'm at and what I wanted to share.
Oh my gosh, Shelina is absolutely incredible. And we have crossed paths over the last decade at Johnson Johnson before we both took exits for various reasons. And one of the really interesting things we've been working on together during our sessions is just finding this sense of being unapologetically ourselves in various contexts and spaces amidst so many layers that we have to navigate. For her, it's carrying the weight of gender, of race into corporate spaces and lack of safety in those spaces. For me, it is carrying a lot of the failures I've navigated as an entrepreneur and the journey I've been on where I'm working third shift at Amazon, which is why my eyes seem so tired. I can see it. I don't know if you could see it. So right now I'm a full-time stay-at-home dad. I work third shift at Amazon, entrepreneurship and all the gaps, and attracting director level roles in med tech. And living in the disparity of those different contexts is something I wear every day, and it's incredibly challenging. So we went into some really interesting pockets in this conversation where we got to hear a lot of her journey, and I'm excited to contextualize it a bit into mine as well. So let's keep jumping through these bullets and we'll see what we find. And this is totally improvised. So stands in a league of their own. Oh, that was my first ad insert, which is crazy. So if you're an engineer in medtech spaces, I would highly encourage you to check out Kinetic Vision. Should I roll the ad? Yeah, sure. This video is sponsored by Kinetic Vision. Let's do it. They masterfully curate the art of science, accelerating innovation through advanced technology. Their capabilities, creativity, and candor have consistently made them my most trusted digital external innovation partner. We've collaborated across continents and time zones, tackling challenges and unconventional ideas and taking them from white paper to fully functional MVPs. Their contributions, from early concept generation to usability studies, test automations, digital twin creation, VR simulations, and beyond, have been pivotal in moving breakthrough ideas towards real-world clinical use. My partnership with Kinetic Vision has been a decade in the making, and it's an honor to introduce you to their world-class capabilities. If you're facing technical challenges beyond what you can do in-house, I trust Kinetic Vision to help you find the path forward and empower you to innovate on behalf of global patients and the clinicians you serve. Finding the right partner to drive digital transformation within your organization and product pipeline is critical to the long-term success of a medtech business. So check out the link in the description below to take the Digital External Innovation Readiness Assessment, which includes a waitlist for experiencing a discovery session with Kinetic Vision. It'll take you less time than it takes to finish your coffee or tea, and it'll provide you with greater clarity on if Kinetic Vision is right for you. Anyways, you could sip on that, and let's get back to Sunday sips. Growing up in this systemic injustice for their whole life and for generations. So, how have you continued to put yourself in positions where there is skin in the game or something that costs to step out and challenge organizations across the duration of your career? We'll circle back to the interaction me and you had at dinner because I do want to get to that point. But I think it's something I've seen across your career is you're always pressing in, and there's a risk. We've talked about like during our sessions together, you shared like I want to be me without the consequence of being me, but you still choose to be me. You still Okay, so this was a huge moment for me and Shelina to make this discovery, and it's something that's very deep on her journey, very deep on mine. This idea of I want to be me without the consequences of being me. By the way, I fast forwarded because I actually recorded part of this without my mic because I muted it for the kids in the recorder. So I'm just going to let the background noise rage. But this idea of wanting to be me without the consequences of being me is something I hold very heavily in my journey. When I hit zero as an entrepreneur in Tokyo after 7 months of going all in on entrepreneurship post decade-long career at J&J, I learned 4 things. The first of which was extreme ownership and just recognizing that my choices and lack of abilities in entrepreneurship is what got us to zero. And ultimately we had to relocate on our own dime to Chicago. Crazy journey over 20 days. We've moved 15 times in 3 years with 4 children. And that was the heaviest move because it was so saturated with failure. So extreme ownership. Number 2, which we'll get to the me without being me, is extreme acknowledgement of circumstances. Recognizing that there are things we didn't know. There are factors that if we had known, we might have taken a different path. And we discovered them, and our inadequacy on our actions, the ownership, matched with acknowledgement of circumstance was so vital to get to that position. And then the third piece was this extreme grace to find a beauty in our failings where our ownership and circumstance, like the ownership can't overcome circumstance.
Oh my God.
And the fourth one is hope renewed and the ability to try again and to keep working at it. So for me, something I've carried heavily in the last year and been navigating is recognizing the challenges my family's experiencing, the lack of stability we've had living in a 4-generation home right now in transition. That is the consequence of being me. But also, I've built a business that is starting to scale. I'm moving into leadership opportunities in medtech. Like, the upward trajectory of being me is really, really interesting. And I love being me, but it also hurts because we've taken these different hard paths. And one of the things that I admire about Shelina is even though she's in that same tension, she's continued to show up for herself in the journey and find these uncommon paths. So that's a little monologue about it, something that I was thinking about in the back of my mind while she was sharing that. And I hope that you could find the ability to love being me, even though you don't want the consequences of being me, but also like we want the rewards of being me as well. And I think that, oh, this is a good tablet thing. Let's do a little side quest here. So something I've been kicking around in my head. Do we want to play with colors? Let's just be boring and black. All right, so this is going to be my book someday. I haven't written it, so this is secret. Look at these amazing circles. I'm going to get so good at drawing this. Yeah, it's all right. So you have do, feel, believe, and emote. And all of this is bringing you along the continuum of authenticity. What you're doing will often need to be contrary to how you feel. If you want to be able to run a half marathon, you will have to make yourself work out on days you don't feel like it, which is hard. This is also driven by a strong sense of belief that you understand if you control the inputs, you can get the outputs regardless of that. What's interesting is Shelina's on an inverse journey. She's actually trying to align her doing and her feeling in her journey. So it's something we've been working through together because it's so contrary to what I'm navigating. But the interesting piece here is what we're emoting externally. And this changes based on whatever context we're in. But as you start to find this deeper sense of overlap between what you're doing, how you're reconciling your feelings around it, what you believe to be true, and what you're emoting externally. And all these are in tension, both warring within as well as what you're emoting outside. As you get them to overlap more and more, you drive towards deeper authenticity in your journey, deeper ability to be unapologetically me in different contexts. But it's so hard because as you drive towards authenticity, look, we have a nice chart. As we are becoming more authentic, it also requires vulnerability. It looks like this. You have to step into more vulnerable spaces before this gap right here, right there, is where you're starting to emote. Up until this point, this is all internal. That's like internal self-work. You're starting to understand who you are, what you're doing, what you're feeling, what you're believing. You're starting to reconcile all these pieces internally, but then you start to see the authenticity breaks through when you start to emote it externally and let others experience the weight of who you are, which is so hard. And you're still vulnerable, but you're being vulnerable outside of your world. Okay, cool. Let's keep rocking. What's our next one?
And then I went into this other environment that didn't value that as much as leadership potential and saw it as a problem. And I started getting some, negative comments around that. That, again, because of all my identity markers were very layered and very hard for me. And I lost my sense of self because I had always known myself as this upbeat, passionate person. And so being characterized a little bit as like mean was like, whoa, me? I'm mean. Like, I know I'm direct, but I didn't think I was mean. And I'm so grateful for that because it really forced me to sit with myself and really forced me to better understand myself. And so, like you were saying, how, you and I were talking, and I said, I like me, but I don't always like the consequences of being me. I realized the consequences that I didn't like is sometimes the rejection that comes with truth telling, sometimes the isolation when people don't want to hear your truth, or don't want to see things a certain kind of way. And, I shared a truth with you, and you could have responded very negatively to that, and you didn't, right? And here we are. And so all of it has taught me that I don't need to put so much pressure on my voice, on what I'm saying. What I need to be really focused on is who can hold my truth.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. Who can hold my truth? And okay, so let's expand this chart. Let's expand this idea. I want to redraw it. And by the way, it's not like I've ever drawn this chart before. This is emerging right now. So we have authenticity. We have vulnerability. Who can hold my truth? And then it is logarithmic. So this steep climb, I'll label it down here. We're going to call this like inner work. And then when you start to see this nice push out, where you actually make some progress on the authenticity, it should be more exaggerated. It should actually be more like this. Shh. You get it. You're with me. Oh, it's so sloppy. This is when you're emoting externally. Emote. And when you're emoting, this is outer work. Letting people experience the weight of who you are. Sorry, I'm not showing this. I see it. There's our bigger chart. Thank you for the grace, friends. So you have your authenticity, your vulnerability, and then you have your inner work, your emoting, your outer work, and that's where you see this nice step change in your authenticity. The reason this is so hard is because you have to overcome fear of rejection. And our limbic brains, our fight or flight, is that system all connected? I'm not a clinical psychiatrist. Like everything about like we want to be part of the tribe, we want to stay connected, we want to accommodate others all the time, or else we'll be cast out and die. There's something internal that prevents us from just naturally moving towards this. This has to be a conscious choice driven by belief, in my opinion, belief being greater than feeling. And then as we continue to test, iterate, and see that we don't die, we find confidence. And that allows us to drive deeper. And this is kind of like where I'm at right now. And I'll tell you, every piece of content I put out on LinkedIn right now, there's a vulnerability because it's either going to push employers away from me, but I believe it's going to help the right person, the right leader in the right seat say, I need Joe on my team for this. Like that it's going to clear the board and attract the one right thing. But if I'm wrong, the impact to our family is huge. So this is like the space, this is what I would call like the danger zone. This is radical. And, 0.0001% of folks live here. Well, let's just say something crazy. And this is where I want to dwell, and I want to get people closer to here because I think this is where you feel truly authentic. Like authenticity, you can only discover it like on the edge. Ooh, 1 second. I think my computer froze. Let me check. Or at least my screen share froze. Still recording. I think I gotta do all my system checks really quick. Remarkables, thank you. It's not responding now. All right, let's jump back into Shelina. I'll see if it can fix itself. All right.
I was chatting with someone right after George Floyd, and everyone was having conversations about their experiences with race. And it's incredibly traumatic to like relive some of these things. So I was like, why don't we make an anonymous video where people can share microaggressions that they've experienced in a professional environment, and then people could just play that so that people don't have to relive their own personal traumas all the time with like their face, like having to say them in front of their teams. And it was such a deeply impactful, humbling experience. Like we listened to everybody's videos. I worked with the production team to figure out exactly what snippets we wanted to put together, what order, and it was heartbreaking to see the things that people have to carry. So like I really appreciate you seeing and acknowledging the things I have to carry, and it reminds me that so many people carry so much. And we're talking about like race in this context, but it could be you are navigating a caregiver and you feel really isolated and no one is talking about that, and you have to carry that in your day to day. Like so many people are carrying so many heavy things and don't have a space to talk about them. And I feel really privileged to have been able to create spaces for people to talk about the racial things that they carry and how it impacts them. And that video got a lot of views and was shared really widely. And I think a lot of the reason why is because it was so raw and authentic. And I don't think people are used to raw and authentic conversations in corporate spaces.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we have to pause here. Going back to this chart, which is becoming where this video is emerging. She put out a video in this space. So this is following the death of George Floyd or the murder of George Floyd. Me and Shelina in different parts of Johnson & Johnson were advocating for inclusion over exclusion and calling out different aspects of racial inequity that existed within our business, helping people navigate the learning curve up into allyship, and just honestly just trying to bring healing. And so much hurt was just propagating within the organization. Because what would happen is you're on a team. Let's say you're on a team with 14 people. One of them's black. You're a project director. So it's just very candid. And we looped through this in the discussion. And your news feed shows George Floyd, eventually Black Lives Matter. You're trying to figure out what's going on. So the first thing this project director does is they go to their black person on the team and like, help me understand race. What does this mean? What's going on? I don't know these things that I'm hearing. What do we do with the team? And while not out of malice intent, this puts a huge vulnerability and load on somebody who has to now educate their manager. And there's a power dynamic up there. They have to equip them to be able to lead the team. They don't get to navigate their own pain that they're navigating with their own families. And then if they're in a higher level of leadership, like they're being engaged multiple times, every person on the team has a perspective or an opinion or a question. And all of a sudden, because they're the only black person in the room, they're carrying the weight of everyone's educational up, like at the expense of further reliving trauma moment by moment over and over again. So Shelina did something incredibly remarkable. And I wish we had access to the footage because I would have loved to share it in this podcast. I still see it. I still remember it. But they had interviews and they de-identified, they changed the voices, and people of color just transparently shared experiences they had completely honestly. Um, and it just cut so deep to hear these things from their voices and for them to be able to step out and share while still being protected, and for that to cascade across an entire organization. A woman just going for a bike because she likes cycling and being called the N-word by a truck chasing her and pursuing her through her town, and just the threat of violence and fear that she was navigating, interactions with the police, people feeling entitled to be able to touch their hair, being called articulate after having, a good meeting, being spoken over, like just all these different layers. And the way that Shelina curated this conversation took the organization into the danger zone where they had to be proximal to the stories. They had to face it. They had to feel it and have some level of empathy. So you're educating, you're bringing up the learning curve, but not at the expense of the person. Now, the person's still processing it, but they're protected in one state and they don't have to necessarily repeat it every single time as well. So this was just such a huge encouragement to me across, I was going to say across the pond, but we were both, I was in Cincinnati, she was in New Jersey. And that was one of those moments where I had the utmost respect for her. And it was such a privilege to do TED Talks side by side with her at the same venue and to see 5 years later, like where we both split and what we're doing. Because I curated a very different dynamic, leveraging TED Talks to bring people into proximity with racial inequity and curating these vulnerable like deep sessions to work through these pieces together in community in the corporate spaces. And I think we leveraged her video in one of our sessions as well. So learning how to take people into this space requires you to go there first. And everyone's danger zone looks different as you're finding your vulnerability, sharing your scars, even your open wounds, and feeling this level, though, of authenticity, of knowing the essence of who you are and letting other people experience that weight. And when you learn how to do that with an organization at scale, that's a huge, powerful moment. And there's not a lot of folks that could just do that naturally. It's a skill that has to be refined over the course of your career. Speaking publicly, doing content creation, they all accelerate that as well. So let's keep rolling. We only got a couple more, I think. Ooh, I'm not sure if I could run all these. We'll see. If you go into a doctor's office and you're speaking with a white clinician, this one, and there's nothing that no one. Okay, so I'm going to unpack this a little bit differently. This was the intro question that we started with. There's a topic called iatrophobia. It's a phenomenon of fear of the healer. It is common within communities of color based on disproportionate experimentation and abuse of peoples of color since pre-antebellum Civil War times all the way to present. Disproportional medical testing at risks. There's a beautiful, terrible book to work through. It just cuts. It's so hard. Called Medical Apartheid that I would absolutely recommend you check out. Again, it's Medical Apartheid. I led a workshop through it with a series of Johnson & Johnson colleagues, and it is just a brutal read to face these things. So what Shelina did, and I'll kind of summarize her thoughts because it's sprinkled across multiple clips, she actually leveraged J&J funds to look at an aspect of medical apartheid, even though it wasn't the language she used, where there's a discrepancy where there's not a lot of medical images that are of people of color. So when you're treating different skin conditions, it's typically on white people. There's also I don't know his name. I think it's John, but it's probably wrong. It's a really popular TikToker doctor who's grown a large following, who's also working at equity in medical images and how we help people feel at ease as they step into a hospital environment and they can see pictures of people that look like them being treated with the same conditions they have, but also making sure that you don't get the incorrect diagnosis from a clinician based on skin color is a risk as well. So she did incredible work in these spaces. I just wanted to highlight and unpack that a little bit. Let's keep working.
The journey is
Also, I'm running video editing software and my recording software in parallel. So when the audio is crackling, it's just because we're pushing the computer too hard. So I'm just going to drive through it.
Like, what are the boxes that people kind of have for me? And what are the boxes that I want to have for myself? When I was growing up, I didn't get a lot of messages of, because you're a woman, you can't be outspoken. That's not in my culture. But in American culture, I feel like there are more messages around what a woman could say and what a man can say, and what both of them are allowed to, take up space in, right? So to your point, it's not just the boxes, but it's like the boxes in the context in which you're in, because that could also be different in the Northeast versus the South. They're like regional micro differences, right? So to me, I spend time thinking about those boxes, but then also spend time thinking about what are the boxes that I want for myself. And it's really hard to step outside of a box and create it for yourself, because sometimes you might be thinking, do I have permission to do that? Like, do I have permission to okay, I know a woman, let's say you don't want to have kids as a woman. I know a woman is expected to have kids and I don't want to have kids. Is that okay for me? Will people understand that, right? It's hard to go against the norm or the things that are expected of you. And I think that's where the self trust comes in. Sitting with yourself enough to know, like, no, but this is really what I want. No, but this is really like who I am. Like it's not going to change. And being able to own that. And for me, owning that has come with accepting rejection, accepting loss that might come with that. I don't think I understood how important it is to embrace loss in life. We all talk about like things we want to gain and acquiring, but I don't think as a culture we talk enough about loss. And, I've lost people that I thought would be lifelong friends, places that I thought I would always be in that really embraced me, a vision for my life. That I had to build a new vision for my life now, right? And I've learned through that loss is as important as desire.
Oh my gosh, there's so much we could unpack. Let's go back to the tablet. So when she's talking about like embracing loss and the things that she lost concern, what she'd be doing, where she'd be living, within my community, the Big Brain Club, we're helping folks build the life they desire. And actually, loss is going to be a really interesting part of this because it's not explicit in my ads, or like the way that I explain the community. Building the life they desire, living where they want, loving what they do, and being paid well for it. The reason I want to call this out, this is the common vision. Everyone in my community, there's 180 plus people. They're from around the world, different backgrounds, left brains, global engineers, entrepreneurs, parents, like creative right brains. We all have this similar arc of trying to build the life we desire, where we can live where we want, love what we do, and be paid well for it. But the first thing we have to reconcile is that this is not currently true in our life. Where I want to be, not Chicago. I want to live in Japan. Now I have to find a way to split live between two countries because I failed. My actions took me not out of the place I wanted to be. So I'm not in Japan. But that's what we're working towards. Loving what they do. I don't necessarily love boxes at Amazon, but I do love feeding my kids. And I've adapted to doing something I don't necessarily want to do to build towards the life where I could do what I want to do. And then, the last piece, being paid well for it. Like, as an entrepreneur, I'm making less than ever. That's why I hit zero 3 times. It took me a long time to figure out revenue for my business. I made around $4,000 last month in entrepreneurship, which isn't quit your job money, but I quit my job a year ago. So we're living in a lot of really interesting risks and inverses because business takes time to gain traction. So when you are in this tension, one of the things you have to navigate is the loss of recognizing my life isn't what I desire. It's not what I hoped for it to be, but then you can get up and do the doings. And there's belief and feeling and emoting that need to be reconciled to enable the doing. So I think Shelina kind of encapsulates that really well in creating space for that grief and that deep processing, which I haven't given myself time for it. It comes in little pockets because I have to optimize around this to get to the next level because the outcomes come from the doing, regardless of how I feel, which is really difficult on a lot of days. I've had definitely setbacks the last couple of weeks because it's hard. It's challenging. Sleep deprived. There's vulnerabilities you find when you step into these challenges of building your own business. But I believe that if I can stay the path, I will get this. My family can reconnect with our friends in Japan. We could be in the green financially, have a business that's thriving that I can run from anywhere. And I can love what I am doing in that business, helping people in the Big Brain Club, consulting on different medtech companies, possibly working within an incredible medtech company, leading a large team to progress new technologies while still being present with my kids. So this is what we're all working towards. Big Brain Club, there'll be a link in the bio as well. But she really provided some great grounding for this around navigating the loss gets you into the doing and the space. You have to feel and experience it fully, then figure out what do you believe and what do you do. And maybe suppress it a little bit. We're not fully in sync. Yeah, let's see what we got left.
And I described it to someone as like, I didn't know if I was going to find water, but I knew there was no water behind me.
Oh my gosh, that was such a mic drop moment. We don't need to unpack it fully, but just this idea that like when you're stepping out into something new, I didn't know if I was going to find water, but I knew there's none behind me. There's moments where the creek can dry up in our life in a certain context, and we have to jump to the next one. I was in Johnson & Johnson for a decade. The last year and a half of J&J, it dried up. It was awful in many capacities. And I knew there was no water behind me, so we took the jump towards life in Japan, and I have no regrets about that, even as we bombed out at it. And I learned a lot, got the skills, and we'll see how to get back with a different pathway. So I know there's water ahead, which is why I keep pressing forward. I think we got 5 more. But I quit J&J, even though I had no cash flow, and I pulled a loan to give us like the ability to pay rent. We went to a vacation to Zushi Beach for a week, and that's where I started to have the vision of like what I wanted to build towards with my community. Like that's the foundation came from that week of reflection. So I'm curious, like what inner work have you been doing across all that travel? How have you found liberation and self-trust during that experience as opposed to being tethered to a prescribed timeline of you have to get back on the market so fast before you're no longer valuable, like all these lies and illusions that happen when there's a gap that occurs. So yeah, I'll give you space for all of that as well.
Yeah, I
Really
mean, I guess
relatable.
this goes back to like what we were talking about earlier of like pushing boundaries. Like, when I first, it started with wanting to go to Iceland. I'd always wanted to go to Iceland. I read this article that was like, this is the best year to go to Iceland because of like, cosmic events.
You got
And I
sold
was
on a
like,
blog? Was that what led the whole?
yeah,
That's
exactly,
awesome.
exactly.
All right, I'm back. So I had to get my daughter set up on Bluey. So this idea of taking pause is going back to this sense of processing loss, like deep processing, and then finding pivot. Oh shoot. It's my magic tablet. So it's taking us back to the sense of finding loss, doing some deep processing, and then finding our pivot or path forward. So Shelina's been on a series of trips, which is awesome to unpack in the podcast. And each one she learned something different about herself. There's different healing that came through the places she experienced. For us, when we quit J&J, we took that 5 days to go to Zushi Beach as a family and reset. That's where the vision of the big brain came from, even though I didn't have the vision right and failed at it. Took a while to get profitability and make something creative and valuable for people. But when I look at where it's at right now, I was like, that's exactly what I imagined being possible at Zushi Beach. The implementation was just radically different as I had to figure out the business model. So taking pause is really helpful in the journey. You seem to do, how would I describe this? Oh, this was so cool. There's something called retrospective sense making, which is really good for personal development, where you look back over your life and see indications that was leading towards your future purpose, and then you make a choice that continues to build your life. I do that a lot. I learned that in my master's in global leadership. You're almost doing future retrospective sense making. Like you imagine future Shelina looking back with gratitude that you made these choices to do this inner work, to position yourself for whatever comes next, regardless of the constraints and expectations around you, which is, I don't know if I would label it uncommon, but it's interesting. And it seems to be really fruitful in your decision making, because you did the same thing when you decided to go to a protest rally, even though there's this risk of what you get. Like, what if you get arrested? But that landed you on a TED Talk and then advancing healthcare equity on multiple levels. Like future Shelina's grateful that you showed up to that protest, regardless of the risks that were before you. Where does that come from? That like what are you navigated in your thought life to lead to that discernment, to hear that voice and do it? Because I think that's something people could nurture. I wouldn't look at that as like you either have that or you don't. It's a gradient of learning how to trust future
Yeah.
use, retrospective gratitude towards choices you made. So how do you nurture that?
Yeah. You know, when I was in grad school, I was in grad school for 5.5 years, and it felt like
Nice.
my whole life.
The
And it was so hard. Like, I remember crying on a bathroom floor one time. I
awesome.
remember spending a month trying to debug a program. You know,
Hmm.
grad school just
I did.
sucked so much from
I did
me.
mine from 2 to 4 kids. I started when my second daughter was born. I was like, I've made a terrible mistake stacking a career in children and school, and I accelerated it right before the fourth one was born, so that I couldn't do school anymore. I doubled my course load as we were expecting our fourth. So I understand the crying on the floor. It's awesome.
I don't know how you did that too. I couldn't I couldn't do that. That's another level.
Yeah.
But coming out of graduate school, I realized that when I was in graduate school, I thought that it was almost like that was my whole life and would always be my whole life. Like I lost a sense of context when I was in graduate school. And I held on to that of like, I never want to lose context again.
Okay. So much here. First of all, crying on the floor. That's so real. I can't stress enough how hard it was to finish grad school and miss everything that was going on as my career with J&J was imploding. Oh man, but this retrospective sense making, so I want to explain it before we get into like future retrospective sense making. So it's the idea that you're right here, okay? And you can look back over the course of your life. This is 0, 15, 30. This is something I did in grad school. And you can look at different, what we call a defining moment. A point when you made a decision or something occurred, and then you saw what happened here because of that defining moment choice. And if you stack enough of these, first of all, it'll give you confidence, it'll give you trust, but it also can give you an indication of like, what's the next thing I should move towards that seems to be in these spaces? Like, is your purpose and your mission and your values and your capabilities are all starting to overlap your ikigai of like what you could do well, what you could be paid for, what the world needs, what you love. And when you get all those pieces together, looking backwards to figure out where to go is a really interesting methodology. What Shelina does though is she imagines like what she could pass to herself here, and that this Shelina is capable to take it farther. So there's always this pass, throwing the baton forward to another level, to another level. It's really curious. Both have value. Like I've lived in this framework a lot. I'm very curious about implementing this. And the only time I can think about actually doing this and reaching a decision was right before I quit J&J. Yes. Oh, you touched buttons. That'll happen. Wow, you ended up in an ad center. That's fun. There you go, love. Right before I quit J&J, out of like, we laid out this list of um, like, um, Joe's whys. This is all in a class I have in my paid community. Felicia's why, for why Japan, and then our fears. We had like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a whole wall of fears. But one of the things that really allowed me to think this way was like, I can't imagine in 3 years, if we're still in Japan, that we would have regretted taking a shot to stay. Like we'd be so thankful that we took a shot to stay if it worked. That was that belief that it could work, and that Joe would have been so glad we took a shot at not moving, because we took 12 moves in 1 year to get to Japan because of COVID and a whole bunch of stuff. And we didn't want to have this boomerang back to the States. Now, being in the States in Chicago, caring for my grandfather who's dying of kidney failure, like this has been huge for my growth. It's been a humbling season, a great season, a reset in many capacities. I'm grateful for it. But I'm thankful that I had the ability to imagine what could have been. Whoa, someone's yelling. Because like I want to carry that forward in future decisions. Like why continue to invest in my business? Why I'm looking at doing medtech startup things, like new different crazy levels. It's because I'm trusting that future Joe's capable to carry the baton higher. All right. I think we got one more thing. Two. Two more dots. What we're going to try to do here, which I've never done on this podcast, I have to press magic buttons and see if I can make it work, is we're going to see if we could start a business in 10 minutes as an experiment. Right. So we're going to see if we could launch a business for you as an entrepreneur because you're in this beautiful transition. And I want to disclaim or like, I want to help people understand. Okay. I don't know what my thoughts were here, but I will post a link below. In 10 minutes, we did start a business for Shelina, and it's amazing. It's a community on Skool, which is what I also curate. Hers is called With Words and Wonder, and she's helping people find their authentic voice so that they can be unapologetically me. I've been coaching her since this conversation was recorded, so she's making adjustments to make that community valuable. It's free to join. So if you have been encouraged by her story, if you want to be more proximal to her and her entrepreneurial ventures, check it out. And I'm going to go be a dad for a bit, but keep changing the world. And you can sip on that. And I'll post some videos that you might enjoy of other Sunday Sips episodes or deep dives. And let me find my magic button. All right. Bye, friends.